Module 10 is kind of an odd one, really, because team flows is sort of done in a hindsight way in the manual, which is good. I'll show you some of the things it's looking at. But when you create a flow and attach it to a Microsoft team, it does all the work for you, so you don't really have to worry about a lot of the stuff that you're going to see here. So I'm going to be taking you through the process that it talks about in terms of team flows. In fact, when I look at my PowerPoint slides, the very next slide is the review of team flows. So I'm going to show you what it's really all about. When you create, as I've done, if you create a team and you add the flows as a team tab, it does all the hard work. You really don't have to do much yourself. So while I go back into my team, go back into the general channel, which is where I've created the flow tab, all of the actual flows when I created them, even though I was the only person inside that flow, it automatically made them team flows. And the book says to make a team flow you add other people, which is not true. You know, the moment you make a flow inside a team tab, then it is a team flow where I am the primary owner, and you always have a primary owner and then the other owners. So I'm going to go back to flows, put this in a new tab, and just compare these options as I go along. So bear in mind, as soon as I created a flow that I built into Teams, it appeared straight in the team flows. And if I go and select one of these, such as the process stationery, this is the one that the users run. I can see that I am the owner. But if you look in here, I've got the Office 365 support groups there that is in there. On the run only users, there's no one. And to demonstrate this, I'm going to actually use one of my members. Which I've now got in here, my delegate H01 and delegate H02. So I'm going to log in as one of them right now. Let's log in as delegate H02, who is there we go. There we go. Do you want to stay signed in? No, just want to get in there for now. So they're logged in. I think my H team hasn't got any rights. But I think that I've not got an account license for them. I can fix that, but it doesn't matter, because if I go into here and look at the Power Automate, and go into my flows, yes, thank you very, very much. There we go. So we go to my flows, nothing there. Go into team flows. Oh look, because I'm part of the team, I have access to. But here's the scary thing: is I'm actually I am by default an owner of those flows. So if I go into here, my request stationery, nice short one to look at, I'm allowed in here because I'm part of the Office 365 support group. That's quite scary, you might think. Not really. Bear in mind, what is a team? It's about collaboration. The whole point of a team is for members and owners to collaborate. So what it's saying is, I've built a team for, by default, all the owners and members to collaborate and manage the flows. So that's what it's doing. Now, if that is not the right attitude, that's fine. I'm going to switch back to my flow. I'm going to edit this. And where I've got the Office 365 support, I'm going to delete them. Okay, so I'm now the only owner, the primary owner of this. And if I go into Microsoft Teams, the only person in addition to me that I would like in there is my H00. So delegate H00, and I'm going to give them the rights to work with this flow. And again, as per normal, as you can see, it's using my connection to get to that and run the process. So if I just click OK. So I've now got me and the delegate H00 as the owners. What I'd like to do then is go back to the list and say, actually, the run only users, the people that can run the flow but not edit it, will be my Office 365 support team. So these are the people that will, and that's what I want. I want everybody in my team to run the flow, but I don't want everybody to own it. So whereas my H00 has got the ability to work with that flow and my connections to pass through, it's saying, okay, for the run users, when they run it, here are the connections they'll use. It's provided by the run only user, provided by the run only user, provided by the run only user. Fantastic. That's exactly what I want. So I'm going to click save. And again, none of this is in the book, so it's really, really important to show that, you know, when you create the team, by default, yes, the owners and the members of the team have access as ownership to the flow. But when I'm finished, and let's just make sure that's all up to date now. There we go. I've now got my team H00 and myself as owners, and all the other team members can run the actual flow and process their information. Let's see if that works. Let's see if that's the case. I'm now going to go into as delegate H02, and I'm going to run that request stationary, because what I want to see is, does my name appear in the stationary list as H02 or as John Day? So it says here request stationary, owners is me, and I'm going to go in there and yes, sign in please as H02. Saying, oh dear. Now that actually makes sense, because as I said, H02 doesn't have a license. It doesn't have an A2 or an E3 license. And now you can see why we have that sign in appear per user. Okay, now how do I fix that? Well, I'm actually going to now give H2, I'm not supposed to do this, but I'm going to give H2 the permissions that it needs, the license it needs in order to run these data connections. So bear with a second while I go back into my admin, and I'm going to find the H02, and I want to assign a license to them. Oh, luckily I've got one left. Let's nick that for now. I'll take it away once I'm finished. So save the changes. Okay, so the license has been assigned to H02. H02 is now logged into Teams and looking at the general channel where the flow tab is placed. And if they click on that request stationary item, where they are with run only rights, what this is now doing is it's going through, and as you can see, because I've now given them the A3 license or E3 doesn't really matter, an E3 A3, it does allow them to have an Outlook account. So if I click continue, it's all working beautifully. But notice when I clicked that flow, it didn't actually bring up the settings, it ran it. So I'll recap that in case you didn't, but if I just put in an item, let's put in a ruler. Bear in mind this is the old one. And this is going to update the data into the Excel spreadsheet. But yeah, the difference is that there's no settings there, that they can't go in and look at the dashboard. They can't look at the information behind it like we can. So when I go into the flow tab as myself, as John Day, looking at this, you can see I've got the request stationary and all the other ones, but as well as the play button, I've got the edit, pencil, and the shareability. And if I click it, it actually opens up the dashboard. So with the run only users, which I've added as H02, with the run only users, they play only. So be careful of that. When you add the team, when you add the flow into your team, primarily you're adding the flows in there, and everybody in the team, members and owners, have access to manipulate and do it on your behalf. If that's not your intention, you can modify and tweak it so that the users that are supposed to run it only and the other people that are going to co-own it are being changed by yourself. Now we've seen how we can get the users to run a flow and it will use their connections. But whilst we're editing and whilst we're managing and testing the flow, it's currently using my connections to run all the process and check it through. So how do we change the ownership so that it's actually using another user's data connections? Let's say H01 wants to go in there and add his or her connections and use that and continue over the flow. So if I go back to the request stationery, the most important thing, as you can see here, is that if I go into the ownership here, even as myself, you cannot delete the primary owner. Okay, you cannot delete the primary owner. That has to be done by IT. So IT will admin will have to sort of pass ownership in some way from the Teams admin. They can sort of swap the primary owner and then remove me, but it can't be done lower down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add delegate H02 as an owner now, because now they've got a license, they can actually connect to Outlook, whereas my H01 is not a sufficient owner. So I'm just going to go in and edit the owners, remove H00, you rubbish you are, to get rid of H there, and then put in delegate H02. But what H02 wants to do now is take those connections and swap them over to theirs. So I'm going to click OK. So H02 is now an owner of this, and I'm going to swap back to H02 and see how that looks when they go into Teams. So there's delegate 02, H02 logged in here. If I just press F5, refresh that page, and all of a sudden, when there's a refresh, because I've got owner rights, back comes the edit and the share buttons. And if I click on the link, it won't run the flow this time. It actually takes me to the dashboard. So now H02 is gone into here, and they want to now edit this particular Power Automate flow. And there it is. So when I expand all these, you can see there's all the actual information going in. There's the trigger, there's the scope with the actions inside. And if I go to these actions, you can see these are still using the John Day at qasp.info. So what H02 can do is add a new connection and log in as themselves. And the idea now is the profile is now using my connection in order to run action. Now the most important thing is it's only going to use one connection. It can't use mine in John Day for my runs and H02. It's going to use one only. So you're just swapping over for whatever purpose you do that. And if I go into the Excel one, same thing again. I can just go in and now say, yeah, go and grab the H02 connection. And I can cycle through all the other things and swap them over to H02. Now, I don't know why I'm doing that. That doesn't have any connections. So there we go. So I've now got all of these swapped over to H02. I'm going to save this. Go back to the request stationery page. And again, there's my owners. I'm going to click on the edit. And just to prove a point, even though we've swapped them over to the H02 connections, I am still the primary owner, and there's nothing that delegate H02 or myself can do about that. That has to be passed up to the Teams admin team, and they're the ones that can actually sort of make H02 primary owner, and then even myself, H02 or the team admin can then remove me from the list. But in order for that to happen, H02 has to do what they've done, to go in there, change the connections to them, and then we can call to the Teams admin team and they can go in there, look at that particular Power Automate flow, and then remove me as the John Day as the primary admin to that. Okay, so you can now see the connections in use is now using the H02s. There are other connections, but a combination of either H02s and mine can be used in the flow at any particular one point. Okay, so that should be quite a comprehensive look about how we would work with Teams, look about collaborating with our owners, and also making sure that even in Microsoft Teams, if you do build them in Flow like I've done, we can still grab all the people in the teams, owners and members, and just give them run only access, and then choose specific people to be the flow owners. So that is module 10 and the final module in this course. So I hope you like these videos. I hope these have helped clear a lot of the content in there. There will be a redo of the course manual, which is my next action, and that will be ready for future deliveries. So I hope you've enjoyed all this video work. I apologize, it's got quite a few hours of videoing there, but you can recall upon these videos at any time and reflect upon the content therein. Thanks very much. This is John Day, and take care.